if the great, I call it SMOD, the sweet meteor of death, if SMOD comes down and say it blows up in our atmosphere, or there's a electromagnetic pulse and it brings us back all to the 1800s, we're not going to be thinking about genders. We're going to be thinking about where do we get clean water? Where do we get food? And I think they saw that their causes might be in trouble. So they were able to use that to co-opt Hollywood. Of course, the Orange Man plays into this, and they were all in lockstep to fortify whatever. And it infiltrated entertainment again. So we all took a giant step back, because towards the end of 2019, after The Last Jedi came out, that's when everything blew up. And the hashtag, the Fandom Menace, started, and there was a bunch of channels talking about Star Wars, but it was always bigger than Star Wars. It was talking about what's going on culturally in pop culture and in our lives. When we started calling it out, we were accused of everything. We were called misogynists, sexist, homophobes, transphobes, Nazis. We're called that to this very day, instead of actually, getting into the discourse, getting into the actual argument. It's easier to label us things so you don't have to argue with us. But after the year went on, even the Disney Corporation and Jar Jar Abrams mentioned the Fandom Menace, because they did start listening to us when we were saying, hey, we're just talking about a story here. We're just talking about, what they did. It's not even Rey, it's what they did to Luke. That's the intersectional feminism in the Last Jedi. They purposely degraded the character. They made him a failure. He had a bad dream about his nephew, and he tried to kill him, and that led his nephew to go to the dark side. And they shot a scene where he's drinking what I call the soy milk out of a titty of a giant manatee or whatever in The Last Jedi. And why would you shoot a scene like this with the hero of generations? Well, the reason, and why would you dress him like the Big Lebowski? Because that's what they wanted to do. That they set out to downgrade Luke so they could raise up their Rey character, but it was also to downgrade the Luke character. And the logic behind this was Star Wars is so popular, these idiots will consume whatever we give them. So we're going to get our new characters in. They're automatically going to love them, and we're just going to crap on the other one. And let's not forget Han Solo, who died a bad dad. He went back to his old ways. He left Leia and was like a 75-year-old smuggler, and then walked into a lightsaber when, it was terrible how they treated these characters. And that's what we were pissed about. And that's where the intersectional feminism and the agenda comes in. It's not just creating new characters and bringing in diversity. It's crapping on the old ones to do it. And that's where our argument is. Bring in all the new people you want. If a trans person is the best person for the role to star in the next Star Wars movie, great, no problem. Just don't shit on Luke, don't shit on Han. But it's already done. And they felt the need to do that because they're simpletons in Hollywood. Hollywood is filled with a bunch of vapid, empty-headed, I call them adult pretenders, who basically, they lie for a living, they act for a living. And I don't know if I worked there for a couple of years, and you get to see how not everybody's, there's a lot of good people there too, but there's a lot of very duplicitous people, and that's why I left there in 2 years. I couldn't stand the culture there, because it's not about helping each other out. It's a lot of individuals who are willing to plunge the knife in your back. And now this group of people, Hollywood, is moralizing and trying to tell us how to live. And they've turned our entertainment into political platforms. And it all, now it's about activism. Everything's about activism, even Star Wars. And that's what's led us down this path.
What did you do when you worked in Hollywood?
I was at the back end. I did QC. I did some editing. I worked on Blu-rays. I was a project manager. So I did a lot of technical stuff.
Yeah, enough to know that these are not your people, and they're ultimately out for themselves. I had an episode a few months ago with Eric July on, and he brought up a really interesting point of it's not enough. If they have this great idea or this great character, they can't just make their own series or make their own thing. They have to take advantage of our nostalgia and say, oh, we're going to just slap Star Wars. We're going to just slap these old titles, you know, and people will show up and watch it because they kind of will, they trust in it, and they want it to be good. And so there must be such an immense amount of mixed emotions. Like, yeah, you're angry, but it's like, this is what it is. You couldn't have seen, you know, you don't know what it would have been if it was done like the right way. So I'm sure a lot of fans feel helpless.
They do. And it's the most curious thing. The reason they're not listening to a lot of the critics is because these critics have been labeled all of these things, you know, the Nazis and the sexists now. And that's that narrative that the mainstream media has pushed, you know, Hollywood has pushed, that anybody who's center or conservative is now basically a Nazi. And they can't be listened to. And if they look like they are bending the knee to us or giving us a single thing, that they're giving into white supremacy, you know, and this whole BS narrative. And, you know, you had Bad Robot, which is an organization run by Jar Jar Abrams during the riots. They put up basically a communist propaganda picture of a bad robot fist in the air, and you know, for Black Lives Matter. And then they gave a list of what you know, on Twitter, or I think it was Instagram, and one of the things on this list, it said no more white comfort.
Oof. Oh God. This came from
a corporation. And you know, for one, this isn't about white at all. It's about the middle class, and it's about the destruction of the middle class. And you know, the middle class's comfort is required to enjoy entertainment. These things are leisures. And if we don't have discretionary income, disposable income, if we aren't comfortable, we're not going to buy your stuff. So I have no idea why they are doing this. And I think it's just appeasement and fear, because it's antithetical to what they are. I mean, for StarTrek.com, I'm a huge Star Trek fan. StarTrek.com a couple of days ago posted the Star Trek Communist. And there's a guy who thinks that, you know, we can live in the Star Trek world today. He actually stated that we're in a post-scarcity world, and all we need to do is become communists. And that was put on StarTrek.com. And, you know, the mask is off at that point, you know, and these are the things we were called paranoid and delusional a couple of years ago for saying, you know, they're using our entertainment as propaganda, and boom, you know, I don't know what else to say at this point. And I don't know how you can have, you know, communism. I'm not a political science major or anything, but the last time I checked, you couldn't have private property. They have a problem with private property, but Star Trek is a private intellectual property that's made to accumulate wealth. I don't know how that fits into communism, but here we are.